Hey everybody, so I have this Cayman card wallet on the bench today, and I got a couple of requests about doing a little tutorial on how I do my painted edges. Now admittedly I don't paint a lot of edges, but with crocodile, alligator, you kind of have to. I'm going to be using Giardini edge paint. I like the dense base coat, and then whatever color you want, I'm just going to be using the beige for this one because it'll look kind of modern with the olive. And this is natural Butero on the inside. This is the new Cayman, the buckeye carriage. You can get all this link in the description. So my first step is going to be to get the edges as smooth as I can, trimming them, that's the one thing I've done. Now I have 220 grit sandpaper here. This is going to be the only grit I use for this whole process. I'm just going to use the same piece for the whole thing. I'm going to sand this down to the point where I could basically burnish it if it weren't made out of crock and wouldn't burnish on that part. And that's where I want to start with my base coat, because the base coat will fill in any dents and divots, but you want to use as little as possible and just get everything really nice and even beforehand, because we don't want a super thick coat of edge paint ultimately. We only want a couple coats on there, or else over time it can peel off a lot easier. It'll lift and peel. We also I don't personally use anything smoother than 220 grit sandpaper because I want the leather to have a little bit of tooth to it. Anytime I've sanded down to like 800, it's always peeled off a little bit easier in my tests. So I just stick to 220, it comes out great. With that done, it's time to go into our base coat. So I've mixed this up, and this is just a clear, thick edge paint that is basically like a primer or a filler. They have another one that is not super thick if you don't want to do any filling. I like the dense because, you know, any extra help towards getting a perfect edge is fine by me. Now you can use one of those edge rollers if you want. I don't have one. I'm using this really nice Buckle Guy sells these now. It's a great one because you can use it for marking patterns, but it's also nice and thick, so you can paint like this. And the reason we're using an awl and not a brush or something like that is because it gives us a nice sharp edge, so I don't really have to worry about this seam right here. With the first dense base coat layer done, I'm going to take my sandpaper and I'm going to just gently take off any high spots. I don't want to cut through this back to leather, but if I do, that's okay on this coat because I'm going to do another coat. So it's kind of a delicate balance between putting enough on to fill all the cracks and crevices and not putting on too much so that you don't have too much of a buildup. And now you'll notice when you do enough of these, there's kind of a pattern of like the dry times. The first coat of the filler takes no time at all to dry, like maybe 10 minutes tops. All other coats of everything take longer to dry. I think it's just because it's soaking into the leather the first coat. But you will notice using Giardini or other brands too, it seems that it happens the same way. Your first coat dries real quick. All subsequent coats take a while. So, you know, a big part of the cost of something like this is labor, because it does take a minute to do. And then when you work at a big leather manufacturer, they have pens that are basically plumbed into buckets to do this on a mass scale. Or you could use a roller too, or a handheld one. I just like doing it like this when I have, you know, one or two to do. Next up, I have a little heat gun here. And before I do any more sanding, we have our second base coat. I'm simply gonna turn my heat gun on low and apply some heat to this base coat. And I'll do this with the color coat as well. I find that if I apply heat a couple of times, it helps the paint set better. So I do it. I figure it can't hurt. You just don't want to use super high heat. Like, don't put this on high, and don't hold it in one place for too long. So what I'll do is I'll heat this up. It'll kind of soften the paint a little bit, and then I'll just let it cool down, and then we'll sand and do our first color coat. Now, one of the things I like to do, you don't want to go too heavy on the corners here, because you'll burn through, which means you'll sand all the way through back to the leather. Not a big deal on the base coat, but very annoying when you do it on the color coat. So what I'm going to do is I just do like directionally a little bit of sanding on the corners, something like that, and just don't press down super hard. And there are other ways to do all of this, of course, but this is just the way that gives me the most control, so I figure it might help you too. Our color coat, more of the same. This is the Giardini beige color. It's beige 18. And I'm just gonna go, I usually do 2 sides, let it dry a little bit, and then do 2 more sides. You'll notice that this edge paint, the color, is, as expected, much thinner than the base coat because the base coat is dense on purpose. So if this is your first time using edge paint or you're not super used to it, go light on the first little pass here just to get used to the different viscosity, because you have to work it different because of that. And the last thing you want to do is put too much on and have it run down your piece. That's happened to me before. It's not easy to clean this off of leather. I don't go super heavy on my coats. I'd rather do an extra coat than put too much on and have it affect the drying and have it be too soft in the end. But I will show you a little trick for getting my last coat nice and smooth. That's a big help. Okay, with the first layer of color dry, it's going to be hard to see on the camera, but you can see we have the shine here of the color. I'm going to take my 220 grit and I'm going to sand until basically I'm using the sheen. I want this to be matte. And if I break through the color in a couple little places, that's fine. But the way this method works is just by keeping the entire surface of the edge pretty consistent throughout the whole process so that you don't have a lot of highs and lows, except for that initial stage of doing the filling with the dense base coat. So once I have all of my sides, you can see here, I went through a little bit, but that's okay. Once I have all of my sides fairly even, and I don't see a lot of shine left, I'm gonna bring back the shine. And here's my little trick. I've done this before. I use 99% isopropyl alcohol. Put a little bit on a paper towel here. And all we're gonna do is brush one way, and you can see that shine come right back. Now, this works on pretty much any leather edge coating that I've tried. And I'm basically using the alcohol as a solvent. This further levels our surface, but it will remove some edge paint. So you want to be careful. Now, it ends up sticky again. This was completely dry before. So we're going to let that dry, hit it with the heat gun again in just 1 minute. Once the tackiness is down, we're going to take one last time our sandpapers. This is the second sanding, and I'm not going to really sand. I'm just going to rough it up a little bit. And this is when I go into the corners, if you have any, and just touch those. I don't want to be sanding the corners a whole lot, because at this stage with the paint so light, it's really easy to burn through it. And what I'm doing is I'm just removing that shine, but I'm not looking in this stage to do any leveling. I'm just looking to get a nice surface to apply the next round of paint. We're getting there. So the next step, another coat of paint. And this is basically, this is the order we're going to go in until the final coat which we're not going to sand after we shine up the edge with alcohol on that final coat. So remember, it's much easier to just do 2 sides, let that tack up, and then do the other 2 sides. Now here is our wallet with, I actually did 2 more coats, so 3 coats total of the color, sanding in between and using our rubbing alcohol. And you can see that we are looking really good. The last step before this is ready to go is I'm going to step back into our 99% rubbing alcohol and just do one last little edge touch up. Okay? Now I did not sand this, I put paint on it, I did not sand it afterwards, because this is what I plan to be the last coat. If it's not good enough, I'll go back in, sand it, do one last coat, but I don't really want to get thicker than 4 coats, because there's a risk of being too thick and peeling off over time. But as you can see, this is looking more than good enough. Nice and shiny, no ripples. I'm into it. So that's going to be it. I think we're going to call that done. As always, let me know if you have different techniques that you use for your edge paint. Do you use heat? What type of machinery do you use if you use machinery? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.